At my father's will reading, they laughed when my name wasn't mentioned. My cousin whispered, "She's a ghost," and my aunt smirked. She was never really family. Then my daughter stood and placed a USB on the table. "Grandpa gave me this," she said. When the lawyer pressed play, what followed shattered the entire room. Because inside the video was the truth they spent years trying to bury. I hadn't been back to Austin in almost a decade. 9 years, to be exact. The last time I stepped foot in this city, I had a car full of bags, a crying toddler in the back seat, and no clear plan other than, get out and don't look back. And now here I was again, pulling into a gravel parking lot outside a beige brick building that looked far too calm for the weight it held inside. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. I glanced to my right. My daughter, Maya, 12 now, was already unbuckling her seatbelt. She looked over at me, her big dark eyes steady, calm, wiser than they had any right to be. "You ready?" she asked.
Was I?
I gave her a tight smile and nodded, though my stomach twisted. We walked in hand. Her fingers were warm in mine, and I drew strength from that little grip. The office smelled like paper and old air. A receptionist greeted us, without looking up. Just told us to go down the hall, last door on the right. The door creaked as we pushed it open, and just like that, I was back in a room full of people who had once called me family and then pretended I didn't exist. Clara was the first to notice me. She was seated at the center of the long polished table, exactly where you'd expect her to be. Her blazer was pressed, her lipstick perfect, not a single hair out of place in her tight bun. She looked like someone prepared for battle, not a grieving daughter. Her eyes met mine, and a cold smirk tugged at her mouth. "Well, look who finally showed up," she said, voice sharp like the edge of a blade. "Don't worry, Rachel. You won't get a dime. Dad made that clear. No hello. No, how have you been? Just straight to the knife." Maya stiffened beside me. I squeezed her hand gently, kept walking. A few heads turned. Some of my cousins, a few family friends I hadn't seen in years. None of them smiled. None of them even looked surprised to see me. Just mildly curious, like I was a stranger crashing their gathering. I found a seat at the far end of the table, away from the cluster of perfectly postured relatives. The chair creaked under me. Maya sat close, shoulders straight, hands folded in her lap like she was trying to take up less space. Then came the voice I'd hoped I wouldn't hear. Aunt Marlene, Dad's older sister. She was seated 2 chairs down from Clara, draped in a plum-colored shawl and judgment. "Well," she said, tilting her head at me with that smug look she'd worn since I was a child, "some people only show up when there's money on the table." I didn't respond. I just stared at the grain in the table wood. It was easier than looking anyone in the eye. She went on because of course she did. "Your father said you were a disappointment, you know. Said you walked away from this family, without a word. And now here you are. Funny." I looked at Maya. She stared forward, silent. I knew it hurt her to hear them talk like that. She may have been young, but she wasn't blind to the way this family worked. The truth? I didn't leave without a word. I left with too many. With pleas, with explanations, with tears. But no one wanted to hear any of it. Not Dad. Not Clara. Not Aunt Marlene. When I showed up at Dad's house with Maya in my arms and bruises I hadn't figured out how to hide yet, he closed the door. No questions. No second chances. I built a life after that. Not much of one, not by the standards of this room, but it was ours. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I went to nursing school at night. I kept Maya safe. I kept her happy. We had hand-me-down furniture and sometimes overdue bills, but we had laughter. We had peace. And no one in this room could say the same. But here I was again. I didn't come back for money. I came because 3 days after Dad's funeral, a plain white envelope arrived in the mail. No message. No apology. Just a date, time, and address written in Mr. Stone's neat script. I almost didn't go. But Maya, she looked at me with those steady eyes and said, "Maybe there's something you need to hear." So I came. The door clicked behind us. Mr. Everett Stone entered, the lawyer my father had used for years. He still looked the same. Tall, gray-haired, always in a navy suit. Tired eyes that had seen too many families tear themselves apart over inheritance. He gave a polite nod, took his place at the head of the table, and opened a thick folder with a yellow post-it note stuck to the front. "We'll begin now," he said simply. Everyone straightened in their chairs like it was a courtroom. Mr. Stone adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and began to read. "I, Thomas More, being of sound mind and judgment, declare this to be my final will and testament." The words felt heavy, not because of what they meant, but because of what they would confirm. I didn't need to hear everything to know how this would end. I wasn't part of his life when he died. I hadn't been for a long time. Clara made sure of that. As Mr. Stone read, I kept my eyes on Maya. She looked calm, still. But I knew her well enough to know when her mind was working. Her fingers toyed gently with the edge of her sleeve. Clara was left the downtown apartment and all its contents. I wasn't surprised. Dad loved that place. It overlooked the river and had floor-to-ceiling windows. He'd spent most of his retirement years there. Aunt Marlene received the lake house and a significant chunk of the investment portfolio. Over $700,000, Mr. Stone noted, not even blinking. Then came Tyler, my cousin. I hadn't spoken to him since I was 17. He used to steal my lunch money and laugh about it. Now he was being handed the family restaurant, the one that made Dad his fortune. Dad had always dreamed Tyler would take it over one day. I guess he got his wish. And then the line I had known was coming, the one that felt like a slap, even though I had braced for it. "And to my daughter, Rachel Moore," Mr. Stone read, "as previously discussed, she shall receive nothing from this estate." Silence. A pause in the room, just long enough to let the words settle like dust. Clara didn't say anything, but I saw the smirk tug at her lips again. Aunt Marlene gave a soft snort. Tyler looked mildly pleased. I stared at the table. I wanted to be numb, but it still hurt. Even after all these years, it still hurt to be erased. But then, before anyone could lean back in their chair or start whispering, Maya shifted. She let go of my hand and reached into her backpack, pulling something out slowly. Her voice, when it came, was soft, clear, unshaken. "There's something else you don't know." When Maya spoke, the room went still. Even Mr. Stone paused, his hand frozen over the page he was about to turn. Clara blinked like she hadn't quite heard right, and Aunt Marlene shifted in her chair with a disapproving frown already forming. Maya didn't flinch. She reached across the table and placed a sealed envelope in front of Mr. Stone. Her voice was calm, like she had practiced this moment in her head. "My grandpa gave this to me," she said. "He told me to hold on to it, just in case things got ugly." Mr. Stone took the envelope gently, studying the handwriting. I knew it the second I saw it. My father's writing, big block letters, always in blue ink. The same hand that once scribbled lunchbox notes for Clara when we were kids and grocery lists no one ever followed. He turned it over, eyes narrowing slightly as he read the label out loud. "For the lawyer. Only if things turn ugly." The room shifted. I could feel it. The ripple of confusion, of nerves, of sudden attention being pulled in a direction no one expected. Clara leaned forward. "That can't be real," she said, her voice sharp. "He never said anything about whatever that is." Mr. Stone gave her a firm glance, then quietly opened the envelope. Inside was a worn, leather-bound notebook and a single folded page. His eyes moved across the page for a long moment before he looked up again. "It's his journal," he said. "And this note confirms its authenticity. It also gives me permission to read from it if I believe it's necessary." Aunt Marlene scoffed. "Thomas didn't keep a journal." "He did," Maya said. She looked right at her. "He gave it to me the last time I saw him." My head turned sharply. "Maya, when was that?" She didn't look at me. "The day I went with Miss Annie to drop off the donation stuff. You had work that Saturday. Grandpa invited me in. We talked. He gave me juice and showed me his music box collection. Before I left, he handed me this and told me not to open it. Not unless something felt wrong later." I stared at her, completely still. I had no idea she'd spent time with him. I remembered that day, Maya had asked if she could go with our neighbor to deliver a few bags of clothes and food to Dad's charity drive. I said yes, thinking it was a simple errand. I had no idea that while I was stacking medical charts in a break room, she was sitting in my father's living room, being seen in a way I never was. Mr. Stone opened the journal to a marked page and began reading. October 14th, Maya came by today. Rachel's daughter. I almost didn't answer the door. But then I looked at her, and she looked back at me like she wasn't afraid of anything. Just polite.
Come.
She said her mom taught her to be kind even when people don't deserve it. My throat tightened. I closed my eyes, just for a second. Mr. Stone continued. We sat in the living room. She didn't say much at first, just looked around at the shelves and asked about a photo of Rachel. She pointed and said, "That's my mom when she was little. She looks strong." I asked her why she thought that. She said, because she still is. A hush settled over the room. You could have heard the hum of the ceiling light if anyone had been listening for it. I always thought Rachel left because she didn't want us, that she gave up. But Maya, she said her mom is the safest place in the world. And I believed her. For the first time, I wondered what kind of pain Rachel must have carried that I never asked about. Mr. Stone stopped reading. He looked around the table, then carefully pulled out another page from the envelope. A copy of the amended will, dated 3 weeks before my father's death. I didn't breathe. In this revised version, Mr. Stone said slowly, Thomas More leaves the downtown apartment, his personal savings, totaling $450,000, and a college trust of $120,000 in Maya's name, to Rachel and Maya Moore. The room erupted. Not loud, not chaotic, but the kind of chaos that happens in silence. Clara's lips parted, but no sound came out. Aunt Marlene looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Tyler muttered something under his breath, something I didn't catch, and frankly didn't care to. Mr. Stone looked directly at Clara and said, "This is the version of the will I am now legally obligated to honor." "You can't be serious," Clara snapped, her face coloring. This is ridiculous. We already read the will. That's final." "It is," Mr. Stone said firmly. "This is the final version. It was signed, witnessed, and authenticated by myself and 2 other parties. Your father's instructions were clear. If hostility arose, I was to present this information." Aunt Marlene pushed back from the table like it had burned her.
He was confused. Old.
"You can't just believe he meant this." "He did," I said, speaking for the first time since Maya had opened the envelope. My voice didn't shake. "You just didn't want to see it." Clara stood up abruptly. Her chair screeched across the floor. She grabbed her purse, her face burning with anger, and walked out without another word. Greg followed her, mumbling something like, "This is insane," as the door slammed behind them. One by one, the others followed. Cousins. Neighbors. People who hadn't looked me in the eye since I arrived. They avoided my gaze as they left, offering nothing but silence. Only me, Maya, and Mr. Stone remained. And still, Maya hadn't let go of my hand. I didn't move for a long time. Not after the last person filed out of the room. Not after the echo of the door closing faded. I just sat there, stunned, hand wrapped tightly around Maya's. I could still feel the heat of everyone's stares like they were etched into the walls, even though they were gone. Mr. Stone gently closed the notebook and placed it back into the envelope. His movements were careful, almost reverent, like he knew what that little leather book had done, what it had exposed, and what it had saved. He looked at me then, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "There will be some paperwork," he said quietly, "but everything's in order." I nodded slowly. I didn't trust my voice yet. I barely trusted the moment. I think part of me still expected someone to barge in and take it all back, to claim it was a mistake or a trick. That Clara would come storming in with a different lawyer and tear the whole thing apart. But none of that happened. It was just us now. Me, Maya, and this silence that didn't feel heavy anymore. For the first time in years, the silence felt peaceful. After Mr. Stone left, I stayed sitting in that room with Maya. Neither of us said much. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I kissed the top of her hair, gently. I could still hear my father's words echoing in my mind. You did what I couldn't. You protected your child. He had finally seen me. After years of being dismissed, blamed, cut off, I was heard. And not just me, but Maya too. My daughter, who carried the truth in her backpack like it was no heavier than a library book, who faced a room full of judgment with steady hands and clear eyes. You okay, Mom? She asked, her voice quiet. I nodded again.
Yeah.
I think I am. She looked up at me. I knew he'd say something. In the book. I didn't know what exactly, but I think he wanted to make it right. I swallowed hard. You believed in him, even when I didn't. I believed in you, she said. And I believed he might have too, deep down. And that did it. The tears came, soft and quiet. Not from pain, not even from grief, but from relief. All those years of silence, of carrying the weight of being forgotten, had finally cracked open into something else. Something whole. We eventually left the office, stepping out into the bright Texas sun. The air felt warmer, cleaner. The city looked different than I remembered, not because it had changed, but because I had. The drive back to our small apartment was quiet. Maya hummed something under her breath as she watched the world pass by through the window. I gripped the wheel with one hand, the other still tingling from where she'd held it. At a red light, I glanced at her. You were really brave today, you know. She shrugged in that way kids do when they don't know how to take a compliment. I just said what needed to be said. I smiled. That's the definition of brave. Later that evening, after dinner, we sat on the couch, surrounded by our usual clutter, school books, a basket of laundry I still hadn't folded, an old throw blanket full of little holes. Our apartment wasn't much. Peeling paint in one corner, the fridge made a weird buzzing sound, and the upstairs neighbors were always stomping around. But it was ours. It had been our haven. And now, everything had changed. We weren't rich. But we weren't scraping anymore either. My name was on something again. A home. A future. A trust for Maya. That trust meant she could go to college without me losing sleep over every tuition form. The apartment meant we wouldn't be renters forever. The money meant I could work fewer shifts, be home more. But more than that, the truth was out. Maya opened the notebook later that night. I watched her from the kitchen as she carefully turned each page. She wasn't looking for money or anything legal. She was looking for him. For the man she met that day in the living room who gave her juice and asked her about her mom. She read a passage out loud, without asking. Her voice was soft, thoughtful. I never told her I was proud of her. I thought I had more time. But watching Maya talk about her mother, I knew then. Rachel didn't run.
She survived.
And she gave that little girl a life better than I gave her. That's what real strength looks like. I had to sit down. Hearing those words from the man who once told me I was selfish, dramatic, impossible, that was something I never thought I'd get. But Maya had given me that. My daughter had carried that journal across months, kept it safe, never read it, never bragged about having it. Just waited until the moment it mattered most. I had spent years thinking I was alone. That leaving had made me invisible. That nothing I said or did ever mattered to the people I once called family. But it mattered to her. And in the end, it mattered to him too. A week passed before the paperwork was finalized. Mr. Stone called to confirm everything. My name was now officially listed as the beneficiary of the downtown apartment. The savings account was being transferred, and the college trust for Maya was secured. I thanked him, not just for the call, but for reading those pages when it mattered. He paused, then said something I won't forget. You deserve to be seen, Rachel. It's about time someone else realized it too. I hung up and sat quietly in our kitchen, the same chipped counter and flickering light bulb overhead, but everything around me felt different now. Not because of the money or the apartment, but because something inside me had shifted. For so long, I had carried this weight that I was the problem, the one who gave up, the one who broke the family. But it was never that simple. And I think Maya always knew. We visited the apartment a few days later. It still smelled like him, like old books would polish, and the faintest trace of his cologne. I hadn't stepped foot in it for years, but the moment I did, something inside me softened. Maya walked slowly through each room, fingertips trailing across the shelves. There were framed photos on the wall, of Clara, of the restaurant's grand opening, even of Aunt Marlene smiling next to Dad. No picture of me. Not even one. But I didn't cry. Not this time. Because I knew something none of those photos could show. I knew that when it really mattered, he saw me. He saw what I'd been through, what I'd become. And maybe he hadn't said it when I needed him to, but he said it in the end. And that counted for something. Maya stopped in front of the grand piano in the living room. Did Grandpa play? She asked. Only 2 songs, I said. But he played them every Sunday morning. Said it cleared his mind. She sat on the bench and pressed one key. It rang out softly, clear and bright. Then she looked up at me. Can we keep the apartment? I nodded.
Yeah.
It's yours now, too. I could see it in her eyes. She already had plans for it. Bookshelves, a desk near the window, maybe a little reading nook. It wouldn't be a shrine. It would be hers.
Ours.
Later that evening, I sat on the balcony while Maya did her homework inside. The city below buzzed in the background, but up here, it felt peaceful. Like for the first time, I could breathe without waiting for the next blow. I thought about all the versions of me that had walked this path, the scared girl trying to make it through each day, the young mother holding a toddler and wondering where they'd sleep next, the woman who sat silent at a table while her family picked her apart. I thought about what Dad said in that journal. You didn't quit. You lived. And you loved. That's more than I ever did. I forgave him. Not because he asked me to, but because I needed to. Because carrying hate around is just another kind of silence. And I was done with silence. When I went back inside, Maya was curled up on the couch with a journal. She had bookmarked a page with one of her hair ties and was rereading it. What's that part say? I asked, sitting beside her. She read it aloud, without hesitation. If this gets to Rachel, I want her to know I'm proud. Proud of the woman she became, even without my help. And if Maya's the kind of girl who carries truth in her hands like it's something precious, then I guess Rachel did everything right. My eyes blurred. Not from sadness, but from something deeper. Something healing. We didn't need a video. We didn't need a dramatic speech. We just needed the truth. And somehow, Maya had brought it home. A few weeks later, Clara sent a letter. No apology, just a curt line or 2 about how she hoped we put the inheritance to good use. Aunt Marlene didn't say anything at all. Tyler sent a single text. Guess the old man had a soft spot after all. I didn't answer any of them. Some silences are worth keeping, but others aren't. That's what this whole thing taught me. That no matter how many people try to erase you, your truth still matters. So I walked away from that chapter with Maya's hand in mine, my father's words stitched into my heart, and a future I never thought I'd have. Not because someone gave it to me, but because I held on long enough to finally be heard.
And that's what saved me.
Not the money. Not the apartment. The truth. And the girl who carried it all this time.